Is Giannis going to Toronto? Certainly seems like it's a possibility, as we got a new report today from the Toronto Star saying that there is actually mutual interest between Toronto and Giannis. We're going to dive down this path. I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. Hope you guys enjoy. Make sure you hit that thumbs up and subscribe. 90% of viewers on the channel are not subscribed, so make sure that that is not you and you are subscribing to the channel going forward, where Trevor Lane and I keep you guys locked in. Speaking of Trev, he's actually going to be back finally starting tomorrow. He always leaves me to do the dirty work while he's on vacation. Anyway, so Giannis, right? Giannis and the Raptors reportedly have mutual interest. I'm gonna say this now. We don't know Giannis's preferred destination, or if he even prefers to stay in Milwaukee. Like, that's, I think, needs to be talked about enough. I think when you look at Milwaukee from the outside lens, you're like, okay, well, they don't have a lot of options because they don't, right? They don't have ways to pivot and improve this team. In fact, there was a report saying that basically their sales pitch to Giannis to stay is that, hey, you want to stay here because we're an Eastern team and your path is much cleaner and easier in the East, particularly next year with the Celtics seemingly removed from the picture. So that's part of the sales pitch. They can't really pivot away. Dame has that injury. Like, there's just a lot of questions with that roster. I think, honestly, that roster could see a complete overhaul, or should see a complete overhaul if Giannis remains on the team. They need to get younger. They need to get faster. They need to get more athletic. They need more shooting. I think there's just, honestly, that whole roster could get flipped over. Maybe you keep a few guys, of course, right? But I think that they need to seriously look into that, but they just don't have the means to do so. And so you wonder, is this the best decision for Milwaukee anyway? Like, they don't want to do this, and they shouldn't want to do this, but they're kind of in a corner right now. So is this just the best option to try to recoup as many assets as you can and just trigger a rebuild? No, you're not going to draft a Giannis anytime soon, most likely. But Giannis wasn't Giannis when he was drafted. He developed into what he became, right? So maybe you can find another gem that probably doesn't amount to Giannis, but maybe you can still be really good really soon, right? And you never know what these young guys are, but maybe you get somebody better. Who knows, right? It's possible. Anyway, so the fun thing about this is that they also put out the list of stars that are the odds for the next star to land in Toronto. And two takeaways from this, a few. Jokic is on the list, which is, I think, funny because I doubt Jokic gets traded. There's that. But secondly, are the Kings having a fire sale? Because, I mean, look, DeRozan is listed, Levine is listed, Sabonis is listed. I mean, are the Kings having a fire sale that we just don't know about? Is that because where is this coming from? Last we heard, because Sabonis is right there at plus 500. Last we heard, Sabonis wanted to know what the direction was with the team. And, well, I think that's a viable question because nobody knows what they're doing. Like, nobody knows what the heck they're trying to do. Aside from just remain a 500 team and remain afloat, be semi-competitive, nobody knows what they're trying to do, right? So there's that. But Giannis is right there as well at plus 600 being the next guy. So we're, again, mostly skewing towards Giannis and going down that path. But look at all these different guys that are listed as potential options to land in Toronto. And these are just odds. It doesn't mean that something specific is happening. I just think it's funny that there's 3 Kings players on the list. All right, moving on from that. There was a report from Wendy yesterday that the Raptors actually are trying to make a big trade. He said, I don't want to get too far afield from this, but since this has come up, the Raptors are a team that is starting to make noise within the league about looking for a big fish. Yeah, the Raptors are apparently looking around to add talent to their roster via trade. Now, that's not like some earth-shattering news. They should be trying to do that. Frankly, every team should be trying to do that. They should be trying to get better. Now, Big Fish is doing a lot of carrying here. Maybe that's where some of those other guys, like a star potentially or semi-star, whatever, is in the mix and where those odds could potentially come from. But I think Big Fish is what you need to mostly focus on because they're trying to get a big-name player on the team, which I think is interesting for this team. So moving on from that, there was also this report as well that popped up. It said the father of a potential lottery pick says the Bucks have been contacting his son and have been doing background research on him despite not owning a first-round pick. Okay. Milwaukee doesn't have a pick in the first round, not even in the top 10, but they're asking about my son and wanting to know a little bit more about him and his information. They've called and I don't understand why they have interest unless they plan on making a move. Dun, dun, dun. So let me just kind of pour a little bit of cold water on this, but this could be something, but it's probably nothing. Who knows? unless they wind up drafting this kid we don't know who it is. It's all anonymous. We probably won't know anyway. But this is a pretty common practice. So teams get a background for this player. Maybe like 5 years from now, they try to trade for him and they know who he is. That's a pretty common thing. But seeing as how we're in the midst of a potential, anyway, Giannis trade, they are potentially also doing their due diligence, and that needs to be noted. We can't just overlook that fact. They are probably also doing their due diligence. That's why I said it could be something, but could be nothing, because this is a pretty common thing. But maybe there is a move, right? Because they don't have a pick. Really, on the surface, there's no reason for them to be talking to anybody in the first 10 picks or whatever. So the fun thing about a trade with Toronto specifically is that they've got nearly all of their assets. I've noticed I've been saying funny thing about that lately. I don't know where that came from, but bear with me. They've got nearly all their assets. They've got mostly all their first round picks. So if you were to try to trade with them, they've got some players you can maybe potentially want, but they've also got mostly all their first round draft picks, including the number 9 pick this year, and that could also be enticing in and of itself. So if you're a team like Milwaukee that's probably potentially drifting towards a rebuild, they could be enticing to deal with because of the fact that they can help you in regard to that. Now, if you're dealing with Giannis, one thing you need to know is a salary number. So he's currently at 49 million. He jumps to, let's say, 58 million next year. So if you're trying to match salary for Giannis, presumably you're doing it next salary year, and you're going to need to be matching that 58 million. And with that being the case, it's kind of tricky. I'm not a salary cap / trade expert guy, so I'm not going to tell you the type of guys that I think they should be trying to pivot and search for. But I would imagine that Toronto would try to keep most of their great players on the roster, right? That's a no-brainer, right? That's not breaking news. So like Scotty, if you're Milwaukee, you're asking for Scotty, but if you're Toronto, you're saying, hell no, we need to keep Scotty. And if you're Giannis and you actually do want to go here, you probably want to play with Scotty, right? So who are you willing to sacrifice if you're Giannis? Are you willing to sacrifice Barrett and Quickly? Because that looks like, just on the surface, it gets pretty close to his salary, right? So you could maybe do something like that. What's up with BI? Because all of a sudden they would have a 3-man forward grouping of BI, Barnes, and Giannis. So is Barnes actually a point guard? That experiment, is he actually a point guard now, or is Giannis going to be the point guard? I actually kind of like Giannis running the offense, but I think this team would need more 3-and-D shooting. Whatever team I think Giannis is on is best with more 3-and-D guys, shooters around him, so he can spray the ball out when he gets downhill. So there's that. But are you trading a BI? And why would Milwaukee want a BI? To be fair, he would only have 2 more years on his deal. You could potentially flip him in that last year at 42 million if you want to, as a 42 million expiring, and maybe get something for him at that point. And really, if you're trading Giannis, if you're Milwaukee, you need to pay a player anyway. So while he doesn't have as much value to you on the court, he's still just a necessary piece. If you were to try to get a BI, it's just kind of crappy to trade for BI and then tell him, hey, take as much time as you need because we're tanking the rest of the season anyway. And then, oh, actually, we're going to flip you for Giannis, right? I do wonder if that's the case. But if you're a Bucks fan, you're looking at this roster and you're like, they don't have anything we want for the most part. You could be mildly interested in some players like a Grady Dick or like a Scotty Barnes or Agbaji, some of the young guys, but not for Giannis. That's where it's tricky, right? Is like you're giving up Giannis. And so I think they would really have to entice the Bucks with a couple of young players on the roster. There's so many guys on this list. A couple of young players on the roster, and they're probably getting the Godfather offer of first-round picks. Like if you're Milwaukee, you're asking for like 5 firsts. You're like seriously doing it because you have to get back as much as you can. I don't know what the limitations are on what they can give out, but at least that, maybe a few swaps. You need to get everything back if the player quality isn't up to your standard. And there was a report that they wanted to, or Giannis would want to go to a team that would have, or Giannis should be, I don't want to put words in his mouth, should be trying to go to a team that would be a contender after trading for him. So like you can't give up too much player wise and then be like, oh, well, this team's stripped of everything. Giannis, come here and we'll just try to rebuild this on the fly. Now you probably need to have a good core around, which is why there was talk about the Celtics. I don't think he's going to the Celtics. I don't think that'll happen at all, but that's why that's the case, because you can maybe flip him for like one of the Celtic stars and then say, oh, well, the rest of the roster is still intact. Can we just make another run for it? Right. So that's where that all comes from. But ultimately, this is all extremely interesting as it pertains to Giannis. Do you think he'll wind up in Toronto? And when do you think we'll get his actual official list? Like, what is the list? Is it like New York? There's some smoke about New York, supposedly. I don't know how they can get another big deal done. My God, looking at New York, Mikal Bridges right there. But who knows what happens, right? This could be a really fun summer of trades.